Good evening to all of you. I would like to welcome all of you for the seminar on electricity pricing on behalf of the Electrical, Electronics and Telecommunication Sectional Committee of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka. As you all know, we haven't revised our electricity price after 2014, which is nearly 8 years, though the cost of all other production factors were increasing over this period. This has become a major contributing factor for the Ceylon Electricity Board to make a loss since 2014 continuously. Due to this situation, today CEB is unable to pay their suppliers, mainly fuel suppliers, coal and renewable energy producers. Therefore, this seminar is organized to identify the reasons for not having that cost-effective tariff over the last few years and to take necessary action to prevent it happening in future days. To make this event more productive, before move into current issues, Dr. Siambalapati will brief you about the main concept behind electricity pricing and mainly the pricing, sustained pricing. Then we have Public Utilities Commission, who is the regulator for utilities, including electricity, to take probably what happened in the past. Next, we will listen to electricity licenses, Electricity Board,
who has license to generate, transmit and distribute electricity, and Lanka Electricity Corporation,
who has the license to distribute electricity in the country. The aim of this seminar is not to point fingers to each other or to any other organization, but to identify where we went wrong in the past and to correct our mistakes for a better future tomorrow. With that introduction, I would like to invite our panel, Engineer Dr. Siambalapati, Engineer Amit Kumar Singh, Rohan Samarajiva, Engineer Rohan Tapesekara, and Engineer Dr. Narendra Siva is not well, he will be joining online. So I would like to invite all of you to this. While they are taking seats, I will introduce our moderator, Professor Rohan Samarajiva. Professor Rohan Samarajiva is the founding chair of EETESC, the think tank active across South Asia, Southeast and Southeast Asia, and he was its first CEO. He is a member of UN Global Pulse Advisory Group on Data and Artificial Intelligence. He was the chair of the ICT agency, the apex body for information and communication technology within the government of Sri Lanka in 2018-19, having been one of the founding directors. He serves as the Director General of the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka. He was an Associate Professor of Communication and Public Policy at the Ohio State University in the US, Visiting Professor of Economics of Infrastructure at the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, Honorary Professor at the University of Moratuwa, and was a member of Specialty Board of the Postgraduate Institute of Medicine of the University of Columbia. His most recent co-authored book is Information With for the Poor, Fighting Poverty with Technology, which was published in Burmese, English, French, and Spanish. Professor, over to you.
Good evening and good morning, good day to all of you who are joining us from far.
Let me introduce our first presenter, Engineer Dr. Tilak Siambala Pitia. Engineer Dr. Tilak Siambala Pitia graduated from the University of Moratuwa in 1982 and earned his PhD in electrical power engineering from the University of Cambridge, UK in 1988. For 10 years, he worked in the Ministry of Power and Energy, Sri Lanka, and at utilities both in Sri Lanka and abroad. Presently, he works as an energy consultant. He is a visiting lecturer at several universities in Sri Lanka. It is over to you.
Thank you very much, and apologies for the technical issues. I will straight away get on with my topic. In this seminar on the failure of the electricity pricing process, I will be covering, as I have made a choice, on how the pricing system should work and obligations of parties. Moving on, the scope I have picked up is a brief on the structure of the electricity industry and an introduction to the problem, and the costing of electricity supply, a brief insight, and how do we move from costs to prices, and pricing of electricity, and the electricity tariff methodology, covering the obligations of parties. Finally, ending with the grid of the future. All the information I present is based on published data and reports. Occasionally, I present my own calculations, which I wish PUC, CB, and LECO to repeat and check. The electricity industry, at least the names of ministries of the energy industry are changing all the time. So I cannot be changing this slide all the time when they change the name of the ministry. At the time I prepared the slide, it was Ministry of Power, Energy and Business Development. Subsequently, it was Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy. Now it is, I think, Ministry of Power and Energy again. What it will be tomorrow, we do not know. But what is important is the structure of the industry, which consists of CEB, the largest entity in the industry, which has its own generation, hydro and thermal, independent power producers, which are the larger, in this case, oil burning power plants and small power producers. And of course, the producer customers. Then, of course, the transmission activity and the distribution activity. What is important is that the distribution activity is conducted by way of 5 entities, 4 of which are owned by CEB. We will move on. Electricity industry has been in reform since 2009 with the Electricity Act of 2009, and the Public Utilities Commission that was in existence for some time was empowered to be the technical, economic, commercial, and safety regulator. So out of these activities, our topic is related only to economic regulation. Technical regulation, you know what it means. Commercial regulation means things like customer care, and safety is what it means. And CEB, the monopoly at that time, was functionally unbundled, not financially, into one generation entity, one transmission entity, and 4 distribution entities. And of course, as of the end of 2020, there are generation licensees, a large number of generation licensees, about 217 number by the end of 2020, whereas solar rooftops started since 2008, who become producer customers, and according to the information I have, about 38,000 customers account for about 590 megawatt of rooftop solar PV. But the core issue here is that the electricity pricing process established under the Electricity Act is not functioning, or it has failed. So the reforms to the costing activity, how to cost the commodity that is called electricity, it is partially operational in my view. But the reforms to pricing is not operational. 71 in year 2013 and dropped to 1894 when the prices were decreased in September 2014. And ever since it has been 16 rupees plus per kilowatt hour. As a planning figure, it has touched 1680 or so. In real terms, in actual numbers, in 2020, it reached about 17 rupees and 3 cents. It is not because electricity price was increased, because the customers who are using electricity above the cost of supply are increasing their consumption. Anyway, leaving those details aside, what is important again is the last line, the cumulative financial loss to the sector. So the cumulative financial loss to the sector over this period in which the Electricity Act very clearly specified how the costing and pricing should be done is a cumulative 502 billion rupees as of end 2021. So it's only in 1 year that has been a cash surplus that was in 2014. We'll move on. What does the law say? I just extracted section 30 of the Electricity Act that talks about electricity costing and pricing. I don't have time to explain all this, but there has to be a cost-reflective electricity tariff methodology according to the Act. The question of subsidies. Subsidies have always been a problem with state-owned businesses. If the government is involved, customers ask for subsidies. If the government is not involved, customers adjust their consumption so that they will not have to ask for subsidies because they will not get any subsidies. So, what does the Act say about the subsidies? Upon being satisfied of the adequacy of funds being provided by the Treasury to bear the cost of any subsidy approved by the government, of course, the law provides for subsidies to be given. Subsidy is not a bad word. The Commission and also will consider the cross subsidies recoverable from other customers. The Commission will set the tariffs and charges to be levied by the licensees, which reflect such subsidies. So, the Act, I think, as an Act could be, is reasonably clear as to how the electricity costing and pricing process should be established and who has the authority. So, how was it made operational? The cost-effective tariff methodology was developed in 2010. I was personally in those discussion groups and published by PUCSL in 2010. 2011, there was a revision, and the revision was largely to account for some small changes that were required. In 2015, there was a revision published. 2021, I think there is a revision, but I've still not found it to be officially published. So these are the cover pages that I could find on the web. Since I've been studying these documents off and on, picture of the 2010 methodology, 2015, 2021. So now my complaint is that the non-compliance with the legal provisions and the agreed procedures, both by CEB and LECO, who are the two main utilities, and PUCSL, has caused the electricity industry to be financially unsustainable, virtually moving towards bankruptcy, depending on how you define, starting from about year 2016. If tariff regulation follows the methodology, what should have happened, for example, in 2021? Because that's the closest example for which I can find a reasonable amount of data. This is a picture that I show very frequently. Once again, it looks very complicated, but let me put you at ease. That's it. All right. So right at the bottom, we have the customers according to the prices they pay in 21. They would pay a total of 259 billion. And the costing methodology and the related costs submitted by the distributors and approved by the PUC would cost, for example, CB distribution unit 1, a sum of 27 billion rupees. At the other end, LECO will be allowed 8 billion rupees for their distribution expenses. So you will see the incomes from the sale of electricity are different across the 5 distributors, because their customer numbers are different, their customer structure is different. So after keeping the money allowed for their distribution activities, for example, distribution unit 1 transfers 48.8 billion rupees to what is known as a bulk supply transactions account, which is established according to the methodology. Now, the bulk supply transactions account as such gets about 170 billion rupees as the remaining money after allowing for distribution expenses. Now, this account has to pay for transmission, has to pay the generators, has to pay the renewable energy developers. And these are the quantums of money that was required to pay for these suppliers as well as the transmission entity. Now, when you balance the numbers, you will see that you will need 80 billion rupees, which according to the law should be paid by the government. If the government says, I cannot pay, that money should be added to this number. That's what the Electricity Act, that's how I interpret the Electricity Act. Of course, part of the money can be assigned to certain customers to arrange a cross subsidy. And of course, there are quite a lot of cross subsidies active at the moment. The same numbers, if you are more comfortable to look at these numbers on a per kilowatt hour basis are shown in this diagram. It's the same numbers as before, shown on a per kilowatt hour basis. So when you look at these numbers, say for example, CB distribution unit 2, it costs ₹5.42 to distribute a kilowatt hour of electricity. But LECO costs only $4.84 to distribute a kilowatt hour of electricity. Now, does it mean that LECO is more efficient, or there could be other reasons that LECO could be cheaper? So this is what was expected to be established under the Electricity Act to what is known as the benchmark competition. That means the regulator as well as the owner of these entities would have to establish a methodology to compare against the distributors and compare one against the other. So one distributor may have shorter lines. Another distributor may have a higher customer density. So therefore, we cannot compare them and say this is good, that is bad, just by looking at these numbers. There have to be a different methodology to compare their distribution performance. I talk about distribution quite a lot because I have been seeing the distribution costs are increasing well above the inflation levels in the recent past, of course, not this year. So we move on. If the government subsidy of 80 billion rupees was not forthcoming, electricity prices should have been increased by 31% by PUCSL on 1st of January or in 2 tranches on 1st of January and 1st of July in 6 monthly intervals. So in terms of tariff filing and compliance, this is the information that I have to present. In 2010, 2011, 2013, 2015, and 2020, the cost submissions have been done. The cost submissions have been done and approved by PUC after a certain amount of deliberations, and the post corrections, because the cost is always approved for the future. So therefore, after the event, there has to be certain corrections to be done. Then, of course, filing for generation costs. Now, distribution and transmission is one set of costs. Filing for generation costs, according to the methodology, should be done once in 6 months. Ex ante, that means the forecast generation cost has been done. Ex post, I could not find a single publication which makes a backward correction to the generation costs. So therefore, generation cost forecasts have not been corrected to my knowledge for the actuals. So determination of the total allowed revenue, that is how much CED and LECO as well as their individual entities are allowed to spend for all their activities, forecast is done and published, but ex post corrections are not done. The compliance with the methodology and the other associated procedures, when I look at how CB and LECO have complied, cost filing has been done, and the costs have never been granted in full by PUCSL. No subsidy provided at all. I've not seen any subsidy that has been approved by the government and channeled through PUCSL. There could have been subsidies that were short-circuited. Say, for example, the government pays a fuel bill to Petroleum Corporation. Now, that does not actually ensure the efficiency of fuel use, because whatever quantity of fuel you use, somebody else pays the fuel bill. That is not correct, although operationally it may be more convenient. And there are no records of CB and LECO regularly filing for customer tariffs as required in the license condition. But there I have to say that the 2011 and 2015 documents say that PUC will do the tariff calculation. PUC will do the tariff calculation, and there's a reason given as well, because there is a uniform national tariff. So when there's a uniform national tariff, and when there are 5 distributors who have different costs, different customer mixes, then there is a lot of information required. Of course, we know 4 of them are CEB and LECO is separate but related. But the methodology says PUC will do the calculation. And the document that is supposed to be the 2021 document, it says CB and LECO should submit the prices. So this is my interpretation. And the trends that I have seen over 2011 and 2021 about the compliance of the government is that the government announced tariffs in 2014 and, in my view, undermined the PUC's authority by announcing the tariffs from an election platform. And the commission followed with a approval, I believe. I have been looking for that approval, but I couldn't find it. It's not published. I only have the numbers published. Of course, tariff numbers can be found anywhere, but I was looking for a commission decision. So the commission persistently approved costs far in excess of the tariffs, 6 monthly since 2010. Of course, PUCSL is legally obliged to make customer tariffs cost reflective. So we move on. I just repeat the slide. So this is the end result of all what we have discussed so far. So that's about costs and how do we go from costs to prices. So once the cost is approved, now I'm talking about the system being operational. Subsidies and subsidies secured from the government. What is the professional way to convert the cost to a price structure? Convert the cost to a price structure. Cost is just one headline number, but this electricity has to be sold to a large number of customers of diverse characteristics and features. So cost of supply can be calculated at each voltage level for different times of day. There can be capacity costs, energy costs, ancillary services costs, fixed costs. Of course, I have to tell you the cost of supply is blind to the income of the user. I hope you will agree. Electricity does not know whether I am flowing into a rich man's house or a poor man's house. He doesn't know the purpose of use, appliances used, and there are adequate examples of commodities that are available in the market in which the end user is not a determinant of the price. Fuel pricing, LPG, any commodity, food items, medicine, the income of the purchaser does not determine the price or the assumed income level. So electricity, in my view, is the only commercial good in many countries, not only in Sri Lanka, where the price is intentionally distorted to meet some other objectives. Of course, technically, the customer burden on the grid in terms of capacity costs, and which are called fixed costs, and energy costs is the way in which the cost has to be disaggregated to calculate the price. Trouble you with all this theory. If a customer is a peak time customer, he should pay his full share of the capacity cost. But if his largest consumption happens during daytime, whereas a country peak is in the night, he does not have to pay for the full capacity responsibility of his consumption. So that will be adequate. So energy costs, of course, very easy because energy flows from the producer to the customer. Of course, nowadays the customer can also deliver energy to the grid, and energy costs can be disaggregated at different voltage levels because it takes a longer distance and more network losses to reach the tail end customers. Of course, depending on the metering and the policy, the time of use and all that can be brought into energy pricing. So what should have been the correct prices of electricity? This is my summary of how 2021 prices should have been. Once again, I have to say 2022, the situation is very volatile, so I would not like to present a calculation for 22, but this is the 21 prices based on published costs. Household customers should be paying 26 rupees. Other retail customers, the general purpose businesses, industries, have to pay about 20 rupees. So you might wonder why households 26, businesses 20. Households are poor, businesses are rich, aren't they? The reason is clear. Households are largely peak time customers. Businesses are largely daytime customers. So when you apportion the energy cost to the different time intervals, finally, when you get a headline figure, you will see that the businesses cost less to deliver, to supply with electricity. The low voltage bulk customers, 1730. Medium voltage bulk customers, that the HV metered customers, 1559. So these are my numbers. However, prices must be accurately calculated for their fixed and variable components. I will tell you why. How am I doing? 5 minutes, 7 minutes. All right. So this should have been the prices of electricity to ensure price was equal to cost in 2021. This is the simplest electricity tariff that one could have. If you are an LV customer, monthly fixed charge of 1,175 and an energy price of 1207. Of course, most of our, in fact, none of our LV customers pay 1175. I will come to that in a moment. Bulk customers, a higher demand charge and a lower energy charge because they are bulk customers. There is no distribution network LV losses to reach the bulk customers. So I will move on. But we can consider the characteristics of different types of customer because all households are not the same. The low user households, they are, I hate to say that they are assumed to be poor, but a low user households imposes a lower demand on the system. So therefore, it is not fair to charge them 1,100 rupees per month fixed charge. My calculation is that the block 1 customer household should be paying about 340 rupees fixed charge per month and 12 rupees 20 cents for energy. Don't forget, it was for last year. And as we go on the ladder, if we still want to retain the block tariff system, which I think should be simplified, you will see that the larger customers in the upper blocks should be paying about 2,700 rupees fixed charge and 11 rupees 40 energy charge. So, of course, we can go on and on to explain how a tariff structure could clearly communicate to the customer what is the fixed cost of him being connected to the system and what is the variable cost, that means energy related cost of the supply of electricity to his premises. Of course, the same data for bulk customers, I will move on. So as of 2021, during which year the fuel prices were relatively low, what I see is that out of the approved costs, about 45% was fixed costs and 55% was variable costs. This is something that both the regulator and the utilities have to keep in mind. The grid is moving towards a situation where there will be two-way power flow. So therefore, the grid has to be conscious about the fixed costs of having a customer connected. And of course, there are variable costs. So another point that I want to quickly highlight is there is always this headline that we hear: Sri Lanka is a country with the highest price of electricity in the region or world. So is there space to increase electricity prices? What about prices in other countries? Are customers really asking for subsidies? This was an update of December 2021, and you see Sri Lanka in the bottom of the league with regard to household customer pricing, at the top end of the league with regard to commercial customer pricing, at the medium point of the league with regard to industrial customer pricing. These are for medium level customers. Of course, we can do a lot more detailed comparisons. This comparison has been done by defining a customer and placing the customer in different countries. If you are in such a country, what would be your electricity bill? That's the idea, not any averages or any published figures. One other point: the number of household customers who are in the lower blocks are decreasing. So which means, whether we like it or not, customers are moving out of the subsidized blocks. I don't think it is because subsidized, but because they can afford more. So therefore, if you consider the yellow bar was the limit for 90 kilowatt hours per month. And you will see these vertical bars represent the 2014 situation, 2017 situation, 2020 situation. So less than 90 kilowatt hour customers, who were about 78% of the total household group, was now down to about 70%. So there is a structural change in consumption across household customers as well. This is the same chart. I put it here just to highlight this one. Perhaps I'm still trying to find the answer to the question as to why 6.7% of households in this country report zero consumption. I thought these were households that do not exist. No, but I double checked. These houses exist. They pay the minimum charge, and the electricity meter reader goes to the house and issues a minimum charge bill, I'm sure, which is 30 rupees. And it costs several times more than 30 rupees to send a meter reader to that house. So why not review these households and ask them to disconnect so that there will be no connection or meter reading costs. So anyway, these are things that can be done. Coming towards the end of my presentation, I'm thinking about the grid of the future, hoping that we will get back onto the tariff methodology and regular submissions and calculations and approvals. The grid of the future will have a service provider to whom customers pay fixed and variable charges. Customers may also generate, as they do now with rooftop solar, and trade energy on the grid. So the grid provides the infrastructure and the technical stability with its own generators or with contracted generators. So therefore, as we move into the future, we need to think of this transition that is happening perhaps over the next couple of decades, in which the grid becomes a highway for energy interchange rather than one-way flow of energy. So my plea again to the stakeholders is to restart the costing and pricing process as stated in your Electricity Act, Tariff Methodology, and the licenses, and to keep the political authority out of this process, except in preparing the energy policy guidelines and in defining and approving and providing the subsidies. Thank you.
Engineer Kumar Singh was appointed as the Director General of Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka in 2010, and he has served on the PUCSL since 2002. He brings to bear many years of regulatory and management experience within the PUCSL and private sector. Engineer Kumar Singh was actively involved in developing the regulatory frameworks for the Sri Lanka infrastructure industries during the last decade. He is a director, board member of Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority and Condominium Management Authority of Sri Lanka. He holds a degree from University of Moratuwa, specializing in technical engineering, master's degree in engineering from University of South Wales, Australia, on electricity industry regulation and restructuring, and master's degree in business administration from the University of Columbia. It's over to you, Engineer.
like to thank ISL and Portal for organizing this particular seminar. I think it is very useful for the country. In the electricity sector tariffs, there are three main stakeholders. The main stakeholder is the consumers or the general public who consumes electricity. Then we have the utilities who supply electricity, generate, transmit, and distribute, and also we have the government. So there are three main stakeholders in this process. So, and this sector is governed by, as you all know, through Sri Lanka Electricity Act. So I will take the exact section of the Sri Lanka Electricity Act, which is the section 30, which governs the electricity tariff. Dr. Simbalapiti has explained the section, but I would like to highlight few of the sentences in that section, which would be very useful in this process. So subsection 1 of the section 30 of the Sri Lanka Electricity Act identifies two types of tariffs or charges. First, tariffs or charges levied by the transmission licensee, and the second one is the tariffs and charges levied by the distribution licensee. I will mostly focus on the tariffs and charges levied by distribution licensee, but it is tied up to the tariffs and charges levied by the transmission licensees. Now we have to very clearly understand this act. So the subsection 2 of the section 30 states be set by the relevant licensees in accordance with the positive effective methodology. So tariff should be set by the licensee. That's the law. Then the all reasonable costs incurred in carrying out of the activities on an efficient basis should be the licensee should be able to recover them. So very important to understand about the reasonableness of the cost. Not every cost should be passed through to the consumer. That is very clear in that, and that has to be proven. What are the reasonable costs? Because as I said, there are many more stakeholders, so the tariff should be reasonable to everyone. That is an aspect that is clearly identified under this act. Then it has to be approved by the commission. So approval power is with the commission. Tariff is set by the licensees. Then we have to show the reasonableness of the cost and approved by the commission. So in the subsection 3, tariff review procedure, which is in the web, timetable of reviewing tariff should be identified, and also provision for consumers and other interested parties to participate in procedure of review. The requirement in that all parties will be given a fair hearing in tariff decisions. So on the subsidy side, commission should be set. The cross subsidy is identified in the and recognized in that. So cross subsidy can be determined by the commission. But if there are any specific subsidies to be given to the certain groups, then government can provide that subsidy, and that subsidy has to be paid directly to the licensees if government intends to subsidize any of the customer categories. So the responsibilities are very clear from that. Tariff setting that should be done by licensees. Tariff approval, its commissions. Proof of reasonableness of cost is licensee's responsibility. Commission should be satisfied and on that. Then declaration of subsidy for certain group is government's responsibility. Funding for subsidies, if government directs or wanted to subsidize any group of consumers, then that is government's. responsibility, and any cross-subsidy determination is Commission's responsibility. Commission has the power to determine the cross-subsidy. So this is the responsibility allocation on the from the Act. So we assume that all response to the law, all response to the financial incentive in this Act, because this is an incentive-based regulatory mechanism. So if you only respond to those incentives, that this Act can be implemented properly. And the second one, I will run through this very quickly to see the possibility of saving some time also. Proof of reasonableness of cost. Proof of reasonableness of cost is very important because, as I said, there are many other parties involved in this process, and there are many other parties who face this. So they need to know whether what they pay is reasonable, and that is recognized under the Act, and it's a legal requirement. So the proof of reasonableness is the responsibility of the licensee, and there are certain requirements in the license and in the 2013 tariff decision and in the tariff methodology also to prove the reasonableness of cost. One is the independent dispatch of it. Second one is the establishment of bulk supply transaction account. Third one is the power purchase agreements between CEB, other plants with that power purchase agreements are there, but with the CEB owned plants and CEB owned transmission licenses. And the power sales agreements between the among the 5 distribution licenses and the transmission licenses to show the cost transparency. Then revenue separation. Sixth one is the audited accounts. So there are certain mechanisms that has been introduced to ensure that reasonableness of cost is determined. So we have to go through these processes and show and demonstrate that the cost is reasonable. Otherwise, it's not reasonable by the other parties who face this tariff. Then how it operates is, now you have the distribution licenses in the bottom, and their relationship with the transmission licensee is governed through power sales agreement. That is what I was referring to. So how this relationship, how this transaction occurs is governed through the power sales agreement. When they collect the tariffs from the customers, they then have to pass those tariffs, keeping whatever they are dues to the transmission licensee based on the power sales agreement. And that cash should go into the bulk supply transaction account. So everybody should see how much the bulk supply transaction account received in a given day. And the bulk supply transaction account reflects the cash flow position of the sector at any given time. At any given time. So, and then from the bulk supply transaction account, you pay the generators based on the power purchase agreement. Based on the power purchase agreement. This is the transparent mechanism of transactions in this sector. So you need the power sales agreement, you need the power purchase agreement, you need the bulk supply transaction account to ensure that the process is transparent and fair. So according to this tariff methodology and the transaction diagram, distribution licensees operating efficiently should be cash positive because they collect the cash, they are allowed a certain revenue to be kept for their efficient operation. If they operate efficiently, there should be some excess cash. So that none of the 5 distribution licensees could be losing. So all 5 should be profitable. DECO is profitable, D1 is profitable to D4 to all profitable, should be profitable if they are operating efficiently. Then the generation licenses operating efficiently should also be cash positive, because from the bulk supply transaction account, you pay the generators according to the power purchase agreement. Transmission license is cash position, which is reflected by the bulk supply transaction account, could be positive or negative, depending on the availability of cash, depending on the prices at any given point of time. So the bulk transmission license is cash position is reflected in the bulk supply transaction account. And subsidy, government subsidy should be paid to this particular account. There should be an account to pay the subsidy, and this is the account that government should pay the subsidy. If that is negative and tariff is set, there should be some money, then it has go to the bulk supply transaction. In the past, from 2010 to 2021, there were 5 tariff submission by the licensees from 2011 to 2016. 2011, there was a tariff submission, 12, 13, 14, and 2016. 2013 tariff was more than cost reflective tariff. From the 2013 tariff, the costs were above the, the tariff was above the cost. Up to 2013, licensees did not prove and commission did not consider the reasonableness of the cost. Did not consider, because none of these mechanisms were there, and it was about 3 years from the time the act came into operation, and there was about 1 year to prepare all these methodologies, so on and so forth. And licensees also require certain period of time, certain reasonable period of time to demonstrate the reasonableness of cost. That commission understood, and from 2010 to 2013, there was no requirement for reasonableness of costing, the proof of reasonableness of cost. But in 2013 tariff, when it was brought into a cost reflective tariff, that was in 2013, Commission imposed certain conditions or certain prerequisites for future upward tariff revisions. I actually explained them earlier. That is to ensure that reasonableness should be proved in future tariffs. So I will summarize. Up to 2013, there was no, Commission did not consider the reasonableness of cost, but imposed some prerequisites to demonstrate the reasonableness after 2013. The mechanisms to prove the costs are reasonable are given in the 2013 tariff decision. So this is the summary of the tariff history from 2010 to 2020. So 2011, there was upward tariff revision. 2012, there was upward tariff revision. 2013, there was upward tariff revision. 2014, there was a downward tariff revision. And 2016, there was a upward tariff revision requested by the licensees, which the Commission did not grant. And from 2016 onwards, there was no tariff setting by the licensees. This is the history, the past. And also, I would like to bring to your attention in this process, when you ask for a tariff reduction by the licensees, the recovery of the previous losses goes with it. When you ask for a tariff reduction, you forego the previous losses. So then you have to start from a clean balance sheet from there. That is how it should be and how it should work. The present, now 2022, licensees have submitted for a tariff revision. Commission has gone through it. Still, no proof of the reasonableness, but the commission has sent it over to the government uh, to see whether government is providing any subsidy or they want to provide any subsidy, and if so, how much. And government has previously done that also in the 2011 tariff. There was a 12 billion subsidy which government has informed us, the commission, that they have paid that. So once we will give reasonable time for government to come up whether they want any subsidy or not. If they don't want, after a reasonable time, the commission will take it for a public consultation, the tariff proposal. And then after the public consultation, commission will decide on the tariff. And the future, I would like to talk about the future. We were talking about setting of the tariffs, but what the future would be. Now this is the July-December 2022 forecast. So we have forecasted about 8,800 gigawatt hours, out of which 2,900 would be liquid fuel, 2,400 would be coal, then major hydros 1,900 and 1,400 from other renewables. So this is the costing now. The costs have gone up for the last 5-6 months due to dollar depreciation and the market price increases elsewhere in the world. So with that, we are looking at around ₹500 million requirement for a period of 6 months. Now, a year ago, we were a 270-300 billion industry. Now we have converted it into, we have, and this industry has become suddenly a ₹1 trillion industry. ₹1 trillion industry. If these prices go, if this goes down to the previous level, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, for the next 6, 7, 8, 9 months or a year, we are looking at quadruple times of cost escalation compared to the 2021 from 2020. So this is the level of price escalation, so the cost escalations that we see. So this is the real issue right now. How do we address this particular issue? This is an affordability issue. So I would like to conclude I will take you to this energy security issue. Now we are in an energy security issue. Affordability is an energy security issue. It is equivalent to you don't have it. If you can't buy, you don't have. Simple as that. And also we have an availability issue. Now we are facing an availability issue. Today, at this point of time, as we are talking, we don't have wood to run the power plants. So we have an affordability issue. Sorry, availability issue as well, apart from the affordability. So this is the risk that we are carrying into the future. This is the risk we are carrying into the future. This is the problem we are facing right now, and this is an issue for tariff setting as well. The questions that may arise: how do you determine a tariff for not 24/7 electric supply? How do you define tariff for at that level? Whether the government would they be able to pay, give the subsidies? These are the pertinent questions that arise with the last 4-5 months changes in this country as well as somewhere else. So we have to look into this issue very seriously. So we are, in essence, we are right now facing an energy security issue. We don't have sufficient energy or capacity right now, and also the prices or the costs are extremely high and reaching almost unaffordable levels. And the industry is converted into a trillion rupee industry from a 300 billion rupee industry. So this is the real issue that we need to address in future or quickly. So now in next 6 months, we have fossil fuels 61, the energy percentage is 61.5% and the cost percentage is 9%. I am referring only from the energy cost, not the capacity and other costs. And renewables 38.5 and the cost percentage is about 6%. So now we have to look at all these numbers and the requirement of recovery of costs to the tune of 500 billion for the next 6 months. We need to determine the tariff. Now the tariff is submitted. Process is on, but that is half of this. So the issue, it is not the submission was wrong, but the time of submission and now the prices have gone up in such a rapid rate. So now whatever the submission now we are taking will also not be able to recover anything close to this, because submission is low. So licensee is also not in a position to submit a tariff, whereas where the costing changes every fortnightly or monthly at a very large steps. Now diesel has gone from 176 to 289 within 1.5 months and 289 to 400 in another month. So what we were buying at 176 3 months ago, now we buy it at 400. We used to buy coal at about $70-80 few months ago. Now the coal, the Richards Bay index has gone to $325 a kilowatt. So this is an issue in tariff setting as well as affordability and all those issues. So we have to consider this as well in tariff setting mechanism. Now I summarize. 2022 tariff has been submitted, it is in the process. So government has to come back and say whether they are willing to provide subsidy or not. Depending on that, the commission will proceed. But still there are some legal barriers we need to overcome, which I think we should all work together to overcome those barriers. And also we need to listen to the other stakeholders as well in this process. And I'm glad that 2022 the process has begun after 2016. There was a lapse of 6 years in tariff setting. Now it has restarted. So I hope we can move forward with those things. But the real issue is elsewhere. We have to look into this, and the energy industry as well as the country and the policymakers, everybody should get together and find the solution for this particular energy security issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Kumarasinghe. Let me introduce our next speaker, Engineer Dr. Rohanta Abesekara, on behalf of Ceylon Electricity. Engineer Dr. Abesekara joined the Ceylon Electricity Board as an electrical engineer in 1986 after graduated from the University of Morocco. He earned his PhD in computer science from the University of Kent, Canterbury, UK. In his career in the Ceylon Electricity Board, he headed the Information Technology Branch, Commercial and Corporate Branch of Distribution Division 2, and directed the System Control Center Modernization Project. He was also in charge of formulating strategies to make CEB an importantly viable institution to achieve the vision of CEB. Presently, Engineer Dr. Abhay Sekara is the acting general manager of Ceylon Electricity Board. So over to you, Dr. Abhay.
Good evening, everybody, both on-site users as well as online users. My task here is to present the CET side of the electricity tariff process. And I think out of all these stakeholders, we are the main victim because we did not get the tariff for such a long time. We have been suffering significantly through that. Let me start my presentation with a small introduction to CET and the costs and revenue and CET's role in the pricing process, the implications of not getting a cost-effective tariff to both CET and for the entire sector, and actions that we have taken to improve the system while waiting for a tariff revision. CET is a statutory body established in 1969, and it holds, after 2009, we are holding generation license, transmission license, and coal distribution license. So, with the generation license division, the license holder of CET, we have hydro 17 power stations, and it contributes 1,383 megawatt with plotons. I think we have had more. Thermal 654, thermal, coal, NCRE, wind 103, and we have total of 3,040 megawatt in the generation division. And it produced in 2021 about 76% of the total generation, especially because we had a very good year as far as the rainfall is concerned. 2021. The transmission division is a single buyer, and it buys all generation from the CV as well as from IPPs. IPPs, we have oil, mini hydro, wind, grid connected solar, and other NCREs like biomass and etc. Also, we have at present emergency power station plants that we purchased because of this power crisis. In addition, we have rooftop solar. At present, about nearly 500 megawatt of rooftop solar is connected. And though it is connected to the distribution sector, it's a pass-through cost to the transmission. We have a network of 220 kV and 132 kV in the transmission network. And these are the figures. Talking about generation mix, the major hydro, thermal, coal, mini hydro, wind, and solar. As you can see, the coal generation has the capacity has increased from 2013 to 2014. That is where this tariff reduction, 25% tariff reduction was made because of low cost generation coal. Again, you can see the solar rooftop is also on the increase. Though we have the capacity, it depends on how much of water we have. So each year, depending on the rainfall, the reservoir levels, this is how we have generated through water hydropower. And to match the demand, we have added coal and other fossil fuel generation. To the available maximum, we have used the mini hydros, solar, and solar. In the CB distribution divisions, we have 4 of them out of the total 5 in Sri Lanka. We have a customer base of 608 million. That is about 92% of the total in SA. Our distribution divisions sold 89% of electricity in our term. We have 35,000 plus substations, 69 area offices, 44 customer service centers in the distribution divisions. We'll have to check this number, but it's 30,000 according to our figures. It's little over 30,000. So the capacity is almost 500 megawatt. That is actually larger than the size of Mohali complex. But that is the capacity wise, but generating energy wise, it's much less. This is how the consumer accounts, number of accounts by division. So the largest is DB2, about 34% of the customer base. Again, the revenue it brings is shown in the second diagram. The Leco generation to CEV is about 9% of the, 9% of the total. Here it's in a different way, sales by tariff. Though the largest is domestic and religious, its contribution to the in rupee terms is much less. So this is how we developed in the distribution sector from 2017 to 21. Now we have about 6.8 million customers, and we have 12,500, more than 12,500 bulk customers who have connected more than in different regions. Also, the line lengths are also given. So with this network, we have managed to reduce our transmission and distribution losses gradually, except in 2020, we have analyzed and it was found because of the COVID situation in the country, So it has gone, according to the March estimate, to 505 billion. Since the prices of diesel and fuel increased significantly during this time, and also the exchange rate variation, it has gone to more than 748 billion. And again, with the latest estimate, it's more than 868 billion. So comparison between the revenue and the cost. 2021, as I said, it was a good year. So therefore, the difference has decreased. But now, from March, May to now, it is on the increase. The cost in a different way of, so the cost of selling point has increased significantly, going from 2021 now. So in 2021, it was 1863. In previous year, it was 21 rupees per grade. Because of the time, I'll skip this, but I want to tell the highlighted total cost at the selling point is now over 54 rupees. When I say it is, that is the effective rate of the cost, considering all costs. That is the fixed cost, KVA charge, and the KWA charge. So this is how the variation over the years. The selling price remained almost constant, while the cost is more or less over the cost throughout the period. So I wanted to skip this part because the previous two speakers touched it, except the point to say that yes, in 2021 price tariff methodology, we have to give the UNT tariff. It is now the CB and the LEGO has to give the calculations to the PUCSL and get the final approval from the PUCSL, which we have done in March. We also have submitted all cost 6 monthly submissions since 2011. Because we didn't get the tariff for many years, this is how our costs have accumulated, and now it stands at 461, but it needs to be corrected with other costs outstanding and the amounts that we need to pay to our coal procurement and other government taxes and so on. So it is a more than half a trillion, the outstanding amount that we have. The tariff revisions at different years. The last tariff revision was 2014, and that's a reduction. So as you can see in dollar term, so our tariff has actually decreased. Let's skip a few slides. So if we don't get the tariff, if the government doesn't give the money to buy fuel, then we can't maintain uninterrupted power. Already we are shedding power because the total capacity. In fact, it is the energy that we cannot make. We have the capacity, but we don't have the fuel to run. We have started several improvements, like processes. We have re-engineered several processes to cut down costs, to improve our efficiencies. We have started e-billing. So and also we are suggesting that because we don't get government subsidies or government loans, we had to see different models for generation and transmission projects. And we propose to simplify the tariff setting process, if possible, even further, because we are submitting our data continuously to the PUCSL, but there is little outcome from the regulator. So whatever the subsidy that is given by the government, it has to be given to by the treasury rather than through the tariff, and also it should be reflected in the national budget, so that government has the full awareness of the subsidy that they are giving and its effort in the national budget. So because of the time limitations, sorry, I had to rush several slides. Thank you very much for giving that opportunity to present our CV side of the tariff.
Thank you, Dr. Besekara. Let me invite our next speaker, Engineer Dr. Narendra De Silva, on behalf of LECO. Dr. Narendra De Silva is the General Manager of Lanka Electricity Corporation. He is a visiting lecturer of the University of Moratuwa, Puthalavala Defence Academy, and the Open University of Sri Lanka. He holds an engineering degree in electrical engineering from the University of Moratuwa, Bachelor of Law from the Open University of Sri Lanka, Diploma in Power Systems from Science University of Trondheim, Norway, and PhD from Heriford University, Edinburgh, UK. He is a fellow member of the Institution of Engineers and Institute of Engineering and Technology of UK. He counts for 23 years of experience in the energy industry. Dr. Narendra De Silva is not well. He will be joining this seminar online. It's over to you, Dr. Silva.
Thank you very much, Kosala, for that nice introduction. And thank you very much, IESL, for inviting me. And good evening to everybody. IESL requested me to tell the story of LECO within the context of this tariff methodology. And I will try to be as short as possible. Our story is pretty short. First of all, I would say that from 2009 onwards, the country's electricity sector got a major transformation. Prior to 2009 and after 2009, we were in a totally two different worlds. 2009, the legal framework consists of three major legal elements: the Act, subsidiary legislations of the Act, the regulations.
Dr. Anand,
Yes.
just for 1 minute. Since we plan to have you on physically, we need to connect you to the sound system. Just give us 1 minute.
Sure. Please take your time.
Dr. Anand,
Yes. Can you hear me now?
not yet, sir. Hold on. Sir, how about now?
Yes, can I start now?
No,
Do you hear me? Chilena, can I start now or? I see that you can see my view, but I don't know whether my sound is being connected.
Yeah, no, try now. Dr. Arendra?
Yes. Can I start now?
Okay, so you can proceed.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Karina. And deep apologies for that technical disruption. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Kosala for the kind introduction and Institute of Engineers for the invitation for me to make a small presentation. And in fact, the Institute requested me to tell the story of LECO from the within the context of tariff and tariff settling. So our story is not very long. It's a short story. I will tell it quite quickly. Actually, from 2009 onwards, the Sri Lankan electricity sector saw a transformation. Prior to 2009 and after 2009, our sector was entirely two different sectors. In 2009, we established a legal framework which consisted of primarily three components or elements: the Electricity Act, the regulations, and the license. The Act required all the utilities to be issued with a license. So we were issued with a license, and there were certain conditions stipulated in the license for our operations. By 2009, all these documents came to us, and fortunately, actually I must mention here that because of our previous management, the team led by Mr. Amarsil Perra, then GM, has organized the company in such a manner that even before 2009, we were pretty regulatory compliant. So for us, it was not a difficult task to comply with whatever the regulations and the licensing conditions enforced on us. So I think from 2010 onwards, we were fully compliant with the regulatory conditions, and we were making the submissions, cost submissions, and we were managing the company within these costs. So how it happens is the Public Utilities Committee, we submit our costs, and then we submit our cost requirements. The Public Utilities Commission approves them. Our task is to run the company, run the utility within this cost regime. If we manage to run below our cost, we will make a profit. So 2009 onwards, LECO was making a profit. This profitability of LECO, I would not like to attribute it entirely to the efficiency of the company. Probably efficiency is also one part, but I think most important element of this profitability was the regulatory compliance. As Damita very clearly mentioned, the regulations are such that all the distribution licenses should be profitable. If we manage to run our companies within the given costs, we are being ring-fenced. Probably the generation companies and distribution companies are the most comfortable set of entities within this tariff regime. It is merely impossible for us to go non-profitable or loss-making unless we cannot manage our costs within the given cost regime. So that's how LECO is profitable. So what I want to mention here is that there is a law in the country now. There are regulations made according to the law, and licenses are issued. As Dr. Tilak Siyamalapitia mentioned, let's comply all of us, not only the utilities, Public Utilities Commission, the utilities and the government. Everybody got their own share to be done. So we got to get this compliance, and we got to restart this tariff making process, tariff setting process, and get this sector going. Today, the sector is at a grinding halt, and in no time, sector is going to collapse. And remember, with the sector, substantial quantum of banks are going to collapse. And if I hope I'm wrong, most likely the entire country is going to break. This is not a joke. This is not a fun-making, merry-making thing. Just looking at it's enjoying a disaster. Energy is lifeblood of any civilization. Creating an energy crisis is a crisis within the civilization itself, within the society. It's a total disaster. So let's please, all the stakeholders, all our engineers. So IESL got a major role to play, because IESL, all of us are your members. Let's get together, as Dr. Tilak Siambalapitiya very correctly requested. Let's start this process and let's get this particular established system running. If we are not happy with the system, let the legislators to change the system. It's not our job. We as professionals, we got to comply with whatever the law that is being established, whatever the law being set, law of the land. And we got to get going, while as citizens, we can lobby for the change of law. Those are entirely two different aspects
Narendra,
of
is it
life.
possible for you to wrap up?
Yes, that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Right. So we are running 15 minutes behind because we started 15 minutes late. Everybody has been diligently staying to their time. There's no blame on anybody on this table. It's just that we started late. So what I'm going to do is, I've got a whole series of interesting questions that have come in from the virtual side. I will read out 3 of them together, and I will ask you to collectively respond to all 3. If you want to take a look at them, yeah, if you can get a mic to. But I'm going to read it out for everybody's benefit. So there are 3 related questions. What is meant by the policy guideline under section 5? Why it says that the commission shall approve the tariff policy in accordance with the policy guideline under section 5? That's the government policy guideline. As a regulator, how can the uniform national tariff be calculated, since all the other determining factors are different in each of the distribution licenses? As stated in 2011 and 2015 tariff preparation, the UNT was calculated by PUCSL. Why is it not done in 21 to assure any subsidy? And the last related question is, recently the minister said that he declined to take the tariff hike request to cabinet. Does the act require a tariff hike request to get the minister involved? Does the PUCSL need any approval from the politicians in the cabinet to proceed with the tariff adjustment? I think the spirit of these questions, it's about the process, because I think the regulator, the Director General, says no tariff was submitted. In your presentation, you're saying the tariff has to be submitted, while the General Manager of the CEB says we were not given a tariff increase. And perhaps I think Narendra also may have felt that he was not given a tariff increase. So if you can address the process between you and perhaps Rohantha first, and And then we come to the definition. Yeah. Don't answer only my question. Answer the questions that were read out earlier. Right? So there's no way you can act on your own. Suo moto action is not possible. You can only react. There's the minister.
Minister doesn't have any role except declaring subsidy. Here, setting the policy guidelines. Here, through the cabinet. Requirement or policy for 2022. The ministry to ask whether the government intends to provide no, that has to come under the policy guidelines. Yeah, it is possible. It is possible. Government can say as a policy. There is. They have given. Yeah. That was given in 2008, 18, and again in 2021. Yeah. Yes, that's a public.
The tariff methodology is very clear. 2016 tariff methodology says, yes, even the act says tariff has to be set by the licensee with the approval of PUCSL following the tariff methodology approved by the PUCSL. The problem is with the tariff methodology, where it says there has to be a UNT, Uniform National Tariff, for the second and third, actually second tariff period. So there it says the PUCSL has to calculate this thing.
The Uniform National Tariff.
To inform national tariff. We have given our costs and PUCSL has approved it.
Right.
Once it is approved, it's anybody's guess that they are efficient costs. Once it is approved, they are efficient, because this is after cutting and chopping some numbers. So this, we assume those are our efficient costs. So in 2021 tariff methodology, only it says CB has to set, or PUCSL together with PUCSL, together with LECO. So according to that, we have submitted in March the UNT, our proposal. And we are waiting.
Did you submit tariffs in 2018, 2019, and so on?
In fact, during that period, it was the second tariff methodology period. As I explained, during that time, we submit our costs following the methodology. it is the PUCSL that has to calculate and give what the UNT tariff has to be. But we have from time to time mentioned that this is our accumulated cost.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this clear. So he's saying you didn't ask for a tariff increase, did you?
We have asked,
In 2018, 2019, and so on.
yes, we have asked.
So there's a
The
direct
difference,
contradiction.
the difference is we have not given a UNT proposal as such, except in 2016.
Okay, I think the audience can see that there's a mismatch here. I'm going to ask Tilak whether he can shed some light on this mismatch.
When I read the documents, I see, I suppose, some conflicting statements.
Okay.
The tariff methodology of November 2015, applicable for 2016 to 2020, in section 5.3 says, during the second tariff implementation period, because remember it started in 2011. So first 5 years, the first period. The second 5 years is the second period. The Commission will define the tariff schedule for final end-use customers based on the policy guidelines provided by the government. The Commission will determine whether which customer categories would be charged under one-part or two-part tariffs and flat tariffs or time of use tariffs every year. My reading of this at the end of a long document which talks about costing, how to submit the cost and how it is calculated and approved. My reading of this is that since there is a uniform national tariff and there are different distributors, it is in fact impossible for CEB to do a calculation because LECO is involved. Of course, if I was managing it, I would have set up a committee and everybody would sit around a table and do the calculation of the prices once the costs are approved. But here PUC has said, you approve, you submit the costs, we will evaluate it, we will do the calculation of the customer prices. If my interpretation is wrong, somebody has to tell me what this 5.3 means. Because this clause has been removed in the latest methodology document. So this clause has been removed or written more clearly that CB and LECO must submit customer prices. That clause is not there in the 2016 document. That's what I can say.
Okay, can I? Now we have to understand there's an act. There are subsidiary legislation under that. So act prevails. So according to the act, it should be set by the licensee. So it has been done. The same methodology was there from 2010 to 2015 also. Right? So it has been done. So that's what I said at the start. We make two assumptions. One is we respond to the law. We respond to the financial incentive. So we can argue for another 10 years, but still the act prevails. I will tell you another example. Now there is a generation plan in that. Very clearly defined who prepares the generation plan, who approves the generation plan. And there is a methodology for the generation plan also. Can the Commission take the power of the act through a methodology or some process or some procedure? You can't. So we have to understand that very clearly. We can argue on the methodology and all those things. Whatever it is, act prevails. That we have to understand. Act is very clear. Responsibilities are very clearly laid down in the act. And there are so many such clauses in that, so many processes described in that in the same way, where Commission cannot get the responsibilities of the licensees or anything like that. So,
Okay.
So if it is possible, then we will take everything.
So then I'm going to leave this question aside and we'll try to deal with it towards the end. But I'm just going to ask about just a follow-up question about the current tariff request. Submitted in March of 2022, all the players, the supplier side, are saying this is terrible. We can't continue like this. I agree. Is the commission responding in a timely manner, or do you feel that they are too slow? I'm asking the question from the CB general manager as well as LECO.
Yes, I think it is rather slow process.
Okay.
We have now after 2000, because the tariff setting,
Yes.
because the tariff calculation process is taken away from CEB and taken as a responsibility of the commission. So there was no reason for us to maintain a tariff branch in that capacity. So we have now only we are increasing the capacities of the tariff setting branch of CEB. Now, because the third tariff methodology, it is given back to the CEB.
Okay, we'll get this as one of the conclusions. Can I have a microphone to?
Hi, I want to bring our attention into something that was in part of that, because, and it's also picking up on something Dr. Rohantha said, and I think what his exact words was, we have submitted our costs. It's anybody's guess whether it's reasonable or not, and it's cutting and chopping. Okay, so this is not how tariffs are set in anywhere in the world. The Act has a very clear provision. It says reasonable cost and efficient cost. So if we are going to do cut and chopping, then we cannot meet the reasonableness standard. So the question to you, Damita, is that in your presentation and in the tariff methodology, there are articulated provisions on how the reasonableness of the cost is determined. So the first question is, have they been met in the 2022 submission? And if they are not, what is POCSL's plan to ensure that the costs that are passed on to the consumers is reasonable? Question number one. Question number two, there was a point about timeliness, right, and appropriateness. I'll bring two practical examples of why this is so. Now, I have been following the cost methodology throughout at least 4 to 5 years. The primary cost document that CEB submits is the bulk supply tariff document. This is never filed on CEB on time, and it's almost always incorrect. The last 6 months, if you look at the last 2022 tariff submission, I will just use one example. According to Lanka Coal Company, the average cost of coal submitted to CEB for this season from October to April is 54 rupees per kilogram. In the BST submission, it is something from 22 to 44. So you do not actually have the exact coal cost. There are $90 million repair going on at Norochole starting from next week. This cost is not in the BST. So we have a problem. Even the cost documentation you are submitting is not consistent with the actual cost of the CEB. Now, given that situation, question to you, Damita, and the fact that the prerequisites are not met, how are you going to meet the legal hurdle of reasonableness and the efficiency of the cost? Thank you.
Is it stated in the Act or imposed by the Commission? If it is imposed by the Commission, the methodology for selecting this condition.
regarding the reasonableness of costing, as I said, Commission has introduced or asked CP to do few things. The dispatch audit is a license requirement. Dispatch audit is a license requirement. So Act clearly says what happens when the license conditions are violated. It's a violation of law. So it's a mandatory requirement on tariff settings. Number two, there are 5 or 6 more things that is determined by the Commission. That's PPAs, PSAs, audited accounts, cash separation. DSTA is from the tariff methodology. All those transparency requirements. And we have not gone into high level scrutinization of capital cost allocations and efficiency of those things. We have not gone in yet. So only the transparency requirements have been introduced as a measure of reasonableness of the cost. Now, on the other hand, your question is how you ensure this is a efficient cost. Now, number one is the submitted tariff is not the full cost reflective tariff anyway. Number two, we need to declare that in the public consultation, because there are other stakeholders. So the real situation, what the Commission thought was to declare, then go for the public consultation and keep the process going, rather than waiting for 100% tariff revision and 100% compliance to the reasonableness measurements, but just to move, but declare it open and get the other stakeholders also.
Corrections or revisions based on that. Here's a tariff request that came in March. Now we are in the month of June. We are in the middle of the month of June. When do you think we can have a tariff revision? Because to do the audit, you have to recruit, get outside consultants.
No,
how long will that take?
I will tell you. When you say March tariff revision, it was revised in April, re-revised in May. So this is the process. Now there are some omitted facts that are here. So March submitted, April revised, April 22nd to be exact, revised. And I think in May, there's another revision that was submitted. So
okay, so let's not quibble about the date. So May.
So no, May. Now we have already sent it to the next step. Now what Commission did was, Commission accepted it. Commission sent it for subsidy requirement. Now government has to state that if they don't give a reasonable time, and Commission will move forward. That's what I said. We will go for the public consultation.
So all your requirement is to hold a public hearing. That's it.
Yeah, but we have to make sure that
who's going to do this audit? That's a requirement.
No, it's not done. No,
it's not done.
It's not done.
If you say it's a legal requirement.
Yes.
So you're going to go ahead without the legal requirement being met.
We have to declare it and go for a public consultations. Otherwise, there won't be any tariff revisions according to that. That is the problem. Yeah.
You can let.
Talking about reasonable costs. So, in our regular 6 monthly submission, the cost of barge mounted power station is dropped. In fact, barge is the most efficient, the least cost plant out of the liquid fuel power stations. So I can't understand how this cost is dropped from the BST. There are few more, Northern Power and 50 generators. The costs are not included in this regulatory costs. So as a result, what we get as regulatory price does not reflect the costs that we
You
incur.
said the least cost ones have been dropped. So that means that your costs are now higher.
Yes, it goes higher. Out of the,
So you should be happy.
no, that is the thermal.
Right.
If you take diesel fired, it is much higher than the heavy diesel fired barge power station. So we are generating, but costs are not included. If we can stop the generating station,
from these plants that have been excluded by the PUCS.
no, the costs have been excluded. Still, we have to produce.
Tilak, you want to make some any comments on this?
I will not comment
You
on
might
that,
not like to. Okay.
but I will comment on the how to, some
The
tips,
reasonableness.
reasonableness. I've been looking forward to seeing some benchmarks. For example, our distribution cost, which was in the range of 3 rupees per kilowatt hour, national average, all the 5 distributors, has now increased to 585. So this is, of course, leaving aside the recent inflationary trends. Now this is 21 figures. So I cannot accept the fact that our distribution costs are continuing to increase above inflation, whereas we should be actually tightening our distribution expenses and being more efficient in terms of staff, the costs, how we manage it, etc. So therefore, what I wish to see is internal CEB or ministry or PUC with CEB establishing benchmarks and monitoring, hopefully a reducing trend of distribution costs in real terms, of course. Inflation adjusted, it should be reducing.
So, Narendra, you always have, there's a tendency for you to be neglected. So I'm going to try to bring you in on this. I'm restating the question. In distribution, the costs, the reported costs have almost doubled.
Yes.
The question is, can you explain this as a pure distribution company? Can you explain what is going on? And Damita, you're going to get a follow-up question on this. Is how are you going to determine the reasonableness of these prices, of these costs?
Yes, certainly.
Okay.
Yes.
So Narendra, can you come in on this?
Yes, actually, the way how I see it is that this reasonableness can be interpreted in various manner.
Just hang on, I'm not getting volume.
Can't you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me or? I think the Zoom participants can hear me, but not the physical forum. It's all right. Can I start? I hear that you all hear me.
My question is just a follow-up. If distribution costs have almost doubled, how can that be explained? And then follow-up question to Damita is how do you assess the reasonableness of this? Because we need to do this before we approve the plan. Or you want to take it?
Yeah, I think people in the audience also can participate if your permission. No, but I also, yeah. So, like to speak?
For a distributor, not a question.
No, like we have made significant improvements to the system distribution side. For example, aerial bundle conductors. So we have invested quite a lot in the distribution network, in AMI, getting the remote metering. So there are several projects that we have planned. So all these are like significantly higher than the alternatives. So that may be one reason why the costs have increased.
So to all in the audience, this is what would happen in a regulatory proceeding. That is, we will have an anomalous data point, and the regulator will put it to the party with the information on the subject. Why is this? Can you please specify this number? Now, under pressure, because he hasn't prepared for this question, the general manager is giving an answer. Now, the reasonableness test would be how this plays out in a formal setting, in a formal regulatory proceeding. That answer will be given. There will be other parties, consumer associations, etc., who will also chip in. Hopefully, they will be allowed to chip in on this. And then the regulator the staff will ask questions, and you will come up with an answer. Okay? Right. So we'll leave it at that, because now you understand, you have a sense of how the reasonableness test will be played out. Is there anything you want to add to that? Because I gave a very generic regulatory response.
Yeah, actually,
any particular criteria that you apply?
no, actually, the purpose of this, if you take the distribution, there are 5 distribution licenses. So one way is to benchmark, and I think they have different costs given. So if you adjust it to certain demographics and things like that, we can benchmark those, as Dr. Simbalapitiya said. And that
can, but do you have the consultants in place to do that? Or are you going to do it with your staff?
we can do it.
Ready to do the benchmark?
We can do, but we have not done it yet. And
I'm worried about time, because everybody's concerned about time.
Yeah.
Can I add a small comment on here?
Our banking system is under threat. The IMF conditionalities are coming, and we can guarantee you that before the IMF agreement is signed, we'll have to have the timeline on this thing, right? So you're not ready actually to do the benchmark, are you?
Yeah, we are ready to do the benchmarking, and also it is important to do the dispatch auditing also, because that accounts to about 90% of the cost. If you look at the next 6 months cost, out of 511, 430 is on the generation. So that has to be shown efficient and also reasonable.
Okay, so you
Professor
now have a
Samaraji, you can add
sense of
make a
this
small
reasonableness,
addition.
because that is, I think, critical. You know, I've been involved in regulatory proceedings in the United States and in Canada, and the real fight is about what are the reasonable costs? What will be allowed to go into the cost space? Because if the regulator and the consumer representative do not bring those costs down, obviously the tariffs are going to go up, right? So this is the heart of the problem, is the reasonableness test, right? I think the Director General was very honest in saying, in the first few years, you didn't do anything about reasonable. That is water under the bridge. We are not going to revisit. I personally think that's a mistake. I think that was an error, right? You cannot give up on one of the central core elements of regulation just like that. But that's ancient history. But for this one, we really have to do it. And that's what's coming from the audience as well, right? Now, I have a few more questions that are related to distribution. So if you have any distribution related questions in the audience here, please come up with them. I would like to take distribution related questions. Here, there are a whole series of these saying, what is the view of biannual meter reading for low usage customer segment with a monthly average payment commitment. Customers pay agreed amount every month based on the last 6 months average bill value. Bill value being taken biannually and bill adjusted every 6 months. That is a way of stopping these people going to the houses all the time. This is a question I had when I was a regulator 20 years ago, where people were saying, why on earth are you generating bills every month? Right? When you look at the staff numbers, the overall numbers in the CEP, and I know this had to do with manpower, people being absorbed and so on and so forth. But quite a lot of these people are engaged in this futile and costly activity, which is the bills that they process actually cost more than the amount that they generate. Right? So this or people in the audience are asking about why doesn't somebody do something about bringing down the cost? Because if you don't bring down the cost, in a cost reflective methodology, the tariffs will go up. Anybody want to respond?
Yeah, actually, biannual meter reading and even the prepaid metering can be done here. Now, for example,
Can be done, and are you going to order it? Are you going to order it? Mandate.
we have not mandated, we can do it, and we have already instructed, given the opportunity for prepaid metering, which I think CB is looking at, and LECO has already looked at it, as I understand.
Dr. Narendra, I think the only way we can do this is somebody give Narendra a phone number and I'll just.
Dr. Narendra, can you start?
Yes, I can hear. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I wish to make a small comment on this reasonableness. Reasonableness in legal context and the common citizens' meaning is far wider than the way how we see the reasonableness, the due process, and nexus to objective, and transparency. These are key elements of reasonableness. So what I feel is benchmarking is one aspect of reasonableness, but apart from that, following the due process, what is stipulated in the act and the regulations, and the transparency. For the public to accept, the citizen to accept, the consumers to accept that our tariff and our costs are reasonable. So that is my contribution here to that question. Thank you.
I think we can summarize that point in this manner.
I can't hear you, Professor Marajiva.
Legal requirements of reasonableness may be narrow, and the public's perception, because this is going to be very important. Everybody is going to have to deal with it. The public will say, you people are just passing on all kinds of absurd costs, salaries, etc., etc. And we are going to have a PUCSL go gamma in front of the PUCSL, right? That's what's going to happen, right? So, in order to prevent that, what you have to do is to have a prior document which says this is how we assess reasonable. That was what I was asking. If you think that is not bounded enough, you should quickly get to that and do that, because that's going to be the heart of the problem that we're going to face. The whole sector is going to face, right? Because I don't think anybody is going to get benefit by some kind of anarchic situation, right? So, okay, now, yes, I'd like to give an opportunity to people in the audience here. Yes, somebody please give him a microphone.
Thank you, Professor. Okay, my question is directed towards CBGM and Director General UCSL. Now it seems there is a beautiful system, and both parties are trying to achieve perfection, and in the process, we see that CB has not received a tariff revision for quite some time, and the organization is heading towards bankruptcy, and the organization actually belongs to us. So if CB is not doing their job properly, isn't it the regulators' responsibility since 2016 that there has not been any progress in this situation, and the required tariff has not been given? Isn't it the PUC or the regulators' responsibility to make sure that at least an interim payment is given to make sure that the organization sustain financially without collapsing altogether, which is much worse than reaching a perfect situation where all the numbers are quite accurate, and what we give as a tariff is the 100% accurate tariff. Can't you have some moderate or some middle point at least to make sure that sustain, like what you did up to 2013 or wherever, which allowed some tariff to be given, while any law legal cases or anything to be initiated from your side to make sure that the perfection is achieved, but in the process still make sure the organization sustain.
Yeah, actually, in the tariff process and in the licenses, the regulator deals with the licenses. So there are 5 distribution licenses. Theoretically, all should be profitable. Cannot lose. LECO is profitable, as Dr. Narendra said. So 1, 2, 3, 4 distribution divisions should be profitable. All generators should be profitable. Only issue is the bulk supply transaction account holder, which is the transmission of the CEB. So that particular account is not yet done. Now, other thing is we are dealing with law. So we have to work under certain legal framework. So there you can't negotiate. Law cannot be negotiated, no. So you have to work within that framework. So law states certain things. True that we have not gone in deeper into the reasonableness of cost and things like that up to 2013. We also believe we should give some time. But luckily, no one went to courts on these things. But 2013, we thought there might be some issue coming up, and that's why this preconditioning and things like that came in. So this is a process. This is not a deal between two parties. This is a process. There are more stakeholders. It is not just giving a tariff, but we have to listen to stakeholders. Stakeholder sentiments should be taken into account and should be 100% legal. And number 2 is that to get some institutions to certain financial levels, you need that incentives to work. This is an incentive based regulatory mechanism. So that has to be implemented properly. So that's why I said at this point of time also in 2022, Commission has given it to the government to get the subsidy if they wish, or else we will move forward. But we know the issues, underlying issues, we have to declare all those things. Commission has to take that decision. I cannot take that decision. So Commission has to take that decision.
Actually explicitly requested a specific amount as subsidy.
No.
So how is the government going to give the subsidy?
No, generally what government does is when the tariff levels are given, government will decide if they are to reduce it, then we will provide what the subsidy amount that is required if we are to reduce it to their levels.
You see your point. Let's see, we are actually we are behind schedule, and I have some more questions from the web that I can read out, but I think we covered the most important ones. Is there any burning question here in this audience? Your last chance. Yes. Can you please?
My question is that in Dr. Tilak's presentation, he has shown us the table showing that the approved cost and the revenue, and there's a difference. Does that mean that this approved cost includes a component of inefficient cost of CB, or they have excluded that? If there's a difference, that has to be provided to CB. The other thing is that some of the explanations done by Mr. Damitha Kumar Singh is not true. We have done the perfect bulk supply tariff on time submission. The other thing is that the coal, the people don't understand. For a coal season, we have to use 38 shipments of coal. From start of the shipment, the prices coming are very low sometimes, and later the last shipment may be very high. So for the bulk supply tariff filing, we use last in, first out theory. For in that particular, the price, we select the correct shipment and the correct cost from the invoices. We are submitting the invoices. They have the proof for invoices and they approve the cost and still saying that the costs are inefficient. So I don't know why they approve the inefficient cost. They can remove some component of inefficiency and they can approve the cost, and still if there is a difference or deficit, they have to give us the tariff.
Okay.
That's my.
Respond briefly to this because it's something that you brought up.
So I have official records of Lanka Coal Company, and the average cost is 54 rupees a kilogram. Now you can give first in, first out, but if all of your first in, first out is less than the average, then you're not getting the full cost. Okay, you can have some costs lower than the average, some cost above the average, but if all the costs are below the average cost of this, you're not getting your full cost. Now, I can also talk to you about the bulk supply tariff submission because it's not coming on time, because the first 6 months of bulk supply tariff has to come before the 6 months because it's a projection. If you're submitting the bulk supply tariff in March for January to June period, you are not on time. There's no two words about it.
Okay, what I'm going to do, I think we can't have a long argument before it. What I'm going to do, given that we are behind time, and I try to start on time. My own events, I start on time. Other people's events, I don't have that. That's why at least I finish one. So my objective is that by 7:45, 15 minutes beyond the point that we were supposed to finish, we should finish. That is my responsibility. So what I'm going to suggest is that we seem to be caught in an argument about technicalities. Technicalities. The law is there. We have to respect the law and the procedures set out in the law. As somebody said, I think said, if you don't like the law, you can change the law. Fine. The question is that if we keep arguing technicalities in this unprecedented circumstances that we find ourselves in, we could find ourselves with a crashed bank system and various other negative outcomes. So I think what we really need to do at this point is my reading as a regulator, as a former regulator, as somebody who's participated in this proceedings, the legal requirements that have been set out have to be followed. There's no question about that. If you follow them and if you're not parallel tracking these steps, if you really don't do a flow chart and say, now this particular thing, we have to start at this time, we have to do the procurement, we have to start the benchmarking. Because you see, if you say the benchmarking has to be done by somebody or costs have to be given by somebody, the regulator has to have consultants in place, so in-house staff to assess this information that is coming in. And it has to be done at a very rapid pace, right? So unless all of us, the stakeholders in this industry, are willing to look at this thing and do it in that parallel track manner, where we are not waiting for one, and our only excuse that I have found too often in government is if somebody blames me, I should have an answer. It's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. All I'm hearing is the classic government response. It's not my fault, it's somebody else's, right? The question is, if we keep doing that, playing that game, we are all going to be in trouble. So what I would recommend, I think the Institution of Engineers can make up its own mind. The questions are available. This discussion has been recorded. And I have been told that the only thing I can do is to have some summary comments of mine, because I'm a very suspicious character. Everybody is scared of what I will say or not say. So this is what I've got to say. I think all the stakeholders should get together and come up with an interim methodology. An interim methodology which can be adjusted according to the legal procedures, right? You make a recommendation to the government, and this is something that IESL can definitely do, because you can argue that the IESL is not a direct stakeholder. The IESL is using its good officers to make a proposal to the government about an interim solution. Now, the interim solution should not cover all costs, right? It should just allow us to get somewhere. And then we run that formal system in parallel. We are not, sir, you'll have to speak outside. You'll have to speak outside if you want to talk on the phone. So we can then make a proposal to the government that the interim solution is definitely an interim solution, and whatever the outcome of the formal proceeding that is ongoing will take into account the interim and will only give the difference, the delta, right? So if there are any errors made in the interim thing, etc., that would be looked after in the formal proceeding. And what we would have to do is to make this recommendation to the government, and the government, through the provisions in the law, would have to give a policy direction to the regulator that this is the procedure to be followed. In my view, that is the way we might be able to get out of this situation within a reasonable length of time. Because from what I know, I participated in the 2013 proceeding, and my team, the young people who were working with me, they said, Professor, what are we doing? I said, they make a video of that. Because the hearing was in the comments were called in April or something, and the decision had to be given in middle of May. So I said, I have never seen a regulatory proceeding where the proceeding is conducted and 2 weeks later, decision has to be given. There's no way it can be done, because you have to analyze the data, the presentations, and make adjustments. That's a complicated business. It takes about 2-3 months, right? So I said, let's just look at the long term and make some proposals about time of day tariffs and so on and so forth. And we'll treat this as a kind of a training exercise for us and for the regulator, right? So I didn't take you guys seriously, but I participated. So you have to take this seriously. You have to walk through the steps and say how much time is required for each of these. And then you have to do parallel processes so that you don't wait for one thing to be finished for the other thing to start. I know you're not the decision maker. It's the commission that is the decision maker. But I think if the commission is serious about its responsibilities, it will do this. And I think the IESL, if it's a professional body that is willing to live up to its responsibilities, will take the lead in making recommendations to the government about giving a policy direction, because you can't blame these people. They have to be given a policy direction. Otherwise, they can't act. Otherwise, they'll be found faulty. So that is my 2 cents worth from having participated in this. I hope we'll be able to make some progress, because I can assure you that if we do not make some progress in this matter, on one side, if we do not give some revenue to the distributors and the companies, Even now, we are killing the private sector. For months, our renewable energy producers have been left high and dry. They can't go on like this, right? They have been making payments. They have been running their operations. They have been giving electricity. This is unjust and unfair, right? So we have to do something, at least to keep those people alive, right? This was one of the great tragedies of what I was doing when I was last in government. I had a list of more than ₹1 billion that the government, my organization, owed various suppliers. And I used to take it around with me like my Bible, and I would show to everybody and say, how can I live like this? This is not how I was brought up. To be a irresponsible person who is not living up to the legal commitments that we have made. And today, we are not living up to the legal commitments that we have made to the renewable producers, right? So we need to get a solution to this problem. And on the other hand, I think if we do not pay attention to this reasonableness test, all parties, both the companies and the regulator, they're going to have trouble, because we are not dealing with a passive citizenry. We are dealing with more energized and active citizens, and they will not take it lying down. I can assure you, you will have trouble if you do not take that part of the equation seriously. So that is, I'm now 4 minutes over time. So I don't really believe in votes of thanks, but if you can do a very brief vote of thanks, we might be able to get people out here within a few minutes.
Thank you, Professor Samarjee, for excellent moderation and also summing up the entire event. So we have come to the end of the event, and I hope we had a very successful event. And as I usually, I think we have to move forward with the team. So let's do it as the professional body. On behalf of the Electronics and Telecommunications Section Committee, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our panel members, Engineer Dr. Tilak Pitia, Engineer Dr. Kumar Singh, Engineer Dr. Rohan Tabesekara, Engineer Dr. Narendra De Silva, and Professor Rohan Samarjee for their valuable contribution made to educate us and make us aware of the current situation of tariff in the country. Thank you very much again for you accepting our invitation despite of your busy schedule. Secondly, I would like to thank the acting president of the IESL, past presidents, council members, and members of the IESL, all invitees who took their time, valuable time to come here and be with us in this event. Also, I thank all online participants for joining with us for this event today. Finally, I would like to thank my colleagues in the Electrical, Electronics and Telecommunications Section Committee of IESL, the CEO and the staff of IESL for their support to make this event successful. Thank you very much. Wish you a pleasant evening.